Hello and welcome to our first mental health symposium. I am the Reverend Dr. Judith Moore. I am founder and CEO of Sisters Saving Ourselves Now. It is a nonprofit organization that focuses on actionable steps that affect Black women and girls. We have two signature programs. One is the Pittsburgh-Mon-Valley Black Women Roundtable, which is a national organization. And the second signature program is Weaving Women Storytelling Network. And so our focus is to make sure that we convene with other like-minded organizations and persons that are interested in collaborating on eliminating the challenges of Black women and girls. Today, if you have any questions, we ask that you would please place it in the chat, and we would do our very, very best to make sure that we address as many of your questions as we can. Now, I talked about the two signature programs. The first one is Pittsburgh-Mon-Valley Black Women Roundtable, which I mentioned is a national organization operating out of Washington, D.C., and the president and CEO is Ms. Melanie Campbell. Some of our focuses as Black Women Roundtable is to address financial wellness, Family Care Act, paid family leave. We also offer an entrepreneur program for Black women and girls. Also, we just initiated a Black Youth Vote and over at Perry High School. And the last is civic engagement. When we talk about the other signature program, before we go there, we want to let you know we're also having a Black Women on Board initiative led by Ms. Jacqueline here, our co-host today. And lastly, Weaving Women Storytelling Network, where we focus on designing self-development, leadership courses. Our hope is that we can develop a village of storytellers and have various events and documentaries, films, and live performance. So let's get to it. Let's start off, please, as we watch this brief video, 3 University of Pittsburgh juniors who are candidly discussing the effects of strong Black women syndrome and how it affects our mental health, especially during the rise of the pandemic.
Mental health. How do you guys feel about it?
I definitely feel like it's making its way into like people's conversations and like how they think when they don't feel like themselves. Like they don't just think like, oh, this is just not my day. They think that, okay, maybe something is not right. Like maybe I'm thinking about things the wrong way. So yeah, that's kind of what I think about when it comes to mental health and how people approach it nowadays, stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely something that is just starting to get talked about because growing up, it was definitely never something that was in conversations. And I think that's important that it is now. And it's like some change is being implemented.
Yeah, and I think because it is such a new topic again, like what you were saying, it is just being entered in conversation. So a lot of it is about sort of teaching our elders, as hard as that may be, but it's like unlearning old habits, and habits are very hard to, diminish. So, but I think there has been a lot of progress in terms of conversation made, especially I noticed that a lot in high school as well, especially, I guess that's when it was really but I don't know, I feel like the conversation was more geared towards that, and we learned more about like hotlines, resources that we can utilize.
Yeah, one thing I will say though, that it is looked at differently in different communities. In the Black community, it is kind of a stigma behind mental health. Sometimes family members will say like, oh, you're crazy, or like, do you need to go to the hospital? And sometimes it's not that. Like sometimes you just need somebody to talk to, somebody to like get this weight off of your chest from, and like, you don't have to put on this facade and pretend to be okay, because sometimes it is okay to not be okay.
Yeah, I definitely think that goes along with like trying to unlearn old habits and like trying to get your parents out of those old habits, because they say what was said to them like when they were growing up, and they weren't talking about mental health or even considering like mental health as an option like Kayla was talking about. So I definitely think that when it comes to unlearning old habits, you kind of have to be a little bit uncomfortable when you're talking to your parents if you do decide to talk to them, because this is kind of like a new territory for them. So they don't know what to say, but then again, like you can tell, like in certain conversations, they don't want to say the wrong thing, because then they know that that door that you kind of open to have that conversation would be closed to anything else that would be kind of like an intimate topic to you or how you're feeling in that moment.
I think as our generation again has done a good job of sort of breaking that generational
curse.
Curse, or ignorance. Like we're starting to enlighten people. And again, like Tiffany said, it is difficult, but I don't know, I think you gotta fight hard and long until, like, I know it's like 5 steps forward and like 1 step back, but that's still 4 steps of progress, or,
And I will say though, I definitely think as Black women, mental health is a lot more difficult for us to maintain, because we do wear a lot of hats and we take on a lot of things, and like we feel like we have to be strong a lot of the time, and we don't really want anybody to see these weak points of us, because that if we're weak, we feel like we're failing, and that's not always the case, because like sometimes you need to fail in order to get back up and do better, and like you need to really just focus on what's important to yourself rather than what's important to the outside world, because if you worry about that, then you just kind of lose yourself and you lose sight of what's important to you and maintaining you.
And I think that also ties into the history of not the best interest for especially Black women in the medical field. So when we do maybe try to go seek those resources for help, we aren't taken seriously, or I don't know, again, our voices aren't being heard. So I think there's still a lot of work we have to do in that aspect. And there's a lot of pressure on us, I think, as well, to sort of like live up to that perfect mentality. I don't know what you call that.
It's like we're not allowed to mess up.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up. It's like, as Black women, like no matter what we're doing, like we automatically go in with kind of like a chip on our shoulder, because we feel like we have something to prove almost, because people expect us to fail in some ways. So like it could just be the little things that we don't want other people to see us doing, because then it opens room for them to critique us. And as Black women, like we don't want to give anybody anything to hold against us, so we try to get to it first. So like we try to beat ourselves down before anybody else could do it for us. So I think like for that mindset, we're the best people that we could talk to, because nobody really understands what Black women go through other than Black women, and like how to fix the problem, how to approach the problem, how to go from there, like decide what's next, and kind of having that support, because you kind of don't feel weak around other Black women if you allow yourself to be truthful. And I think that's a lot about, of what mental health is really about, just being truthful about how you feel and what you want to do about it.
And definitely like during the pandemic, like it was a much harder time for a lot of Black moms, like whether they were Black single moms, Black married moms, because they had to take on a whole lot of different tasks now that was never presented to them before. And even like seeing my own mom, she's a single Black mom, like it's the same thing. Like you see these Black women out here being strong for everyone but themselves. And I think now we have to be strong for ourselves rather than being strong for everybody else.
Thank you all so much for listening. They really are touching a lot of spots when we talk about mental health and Black women. So now at this time, I would like to introduce to you Ms. Jacqueline Hill, who is the Senior Policy Advisor for the Pittsburgh-Mon-Valley Black Women's Roundtable. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us this morning. Our goal is to uplift and enlighten you by providing you with some insight and tools to improve your mental health. We have assembled a distinguished panel that includes therapists, counselors, and a physician to allow for the healing of the mind, body, and spirit. I would like to begin by introducing our physician, Dr. Anita Edwards, to talk about the importance of our physical health and how it relates to our mental health. Dr. Anita Edwards is a medical doctor at Highmark Whole Care. She received her Bachelor's of Science degree from the University of Pittsburgh and her Doctor of Medicine degree from Howard University School of Medicine. She later received her Master's in Business and in the Physician's Executive Program of the University of Tennessee. She has also received the title of Fellow of the Academy College of Physicians. During her employment at Gateway Health, Dr. Edwards started and co-chaired the Health Equity Committee, along with several other projects that involve issues of disparities. With Gateway, she had been very active in conducting presentations on women and African American health. During the pandemic, she conducted several presentations on the virus and the importance of vaccinations to faith-based organizations. She has coordinated several conferences for the community on COVID, and that covered school-related issues, the elderly, mental health, and general public concerns. She has actively been involved in the Gateway Medical Society since 2004, where she served as treasurer, secretary, vice president, and president of the organization. And in 2014, she was named Physician of the Year by the Gateway Medical Society. Good morning, Dr. Edwards. Is she there?
Good morning, Dr. Hill. Good morning, Dr. Hill. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I always say I don't know if that's me you're talking about when I hear it. I thank you for that presentation.
Now, I would like to begin with something just very simple. Sounds simple, but might be more complicated. Could you talk about the importance of the foundation for good physical health and how neglecting our health can impact our mental health?
So that was a complicated question. So as we start off this talk, I think as the young ladies were speaking and they talked about strong mothers, I think one of the first things is African American women especially, but women in whole. I think we put our health to the side. And we have always done that. So that's not new to the pandemic. We have always put our families, our children, church, organizations, always probably ahead of us. But because of the pandemic, I think things have shifted because so many things now are in the home. And so everything now has become the mother's responsibility or the female's responsibility. As the young people were saying, they're now teaching their kids at home. They're taking care of all the issues of the family from the home without any relief. They don't have any way to get out. There's no socialization. So with this, I think they are taking care of themselves even less. I'll just start off with exercise. I don't think that we as females probably exercise as much as we were doing prior to the pandemic. When it first came out, it was problems of finding places to exercise. Most of the gyms shut down. It was actually in the winter when it started, so it was cold, something like it is today, freezing outside. And so therefore we weren't able to exercise. And, and then you had your kids at home. And so again, how do you exercise and how do you take care of your body? How do you make sure that you're doing what you need to do for yourself? Also, I think eating became seriously another problem that females are not doing properly for themselves. They just, quick meals, trying to make sure everybody is eating. Now you're trying to provide 3 meals at home. So therefore it is now more of quick foods. and how do you just get it done? And so, we're not eating properly. Eating has always been a problem for a lot of our neighborhoods because of food deserts, and we don't have the proper foods in our neighborhoods most of the time. Lots of times there's not grocery stores in our area. Even when you see the stores, they don't always have good produce. They always tell you to shop on the out perimeters of the store, but I don't know about you, but I notice my grocery bill is climbing higher and higher. And so it's making it much more difficult to try to shop healthy. If I shop healthy, then that means nothing else is probably in the basket, which is a third problem then becomes, because then people have to make a choice between taking care of eating, or whether they want to take care of medications, or whether they want to take care of something their child needs at that particular point. So again, women are neglecting themselves many times to try to take care of their family. One of the things we have noticed during this time period is that the rise of certain illnesses have definitely increased during this time. One of the things is people just aren't going to the doctor. Originally, during the pandemic, people were afraid to go to the doctor. And for many of them, you couldn't get a doctor's appointment, even if you wanted to go. They did then develop telemedicine, and that helped some. But how much can you interact with your physician if he can't touch you or she can't touch you? They can't lay their hands on you. You're trying to do it all through conversation. Now we're relying strictly on the history, which is not a bad thing, but we cannot confirm what you're telling us. I did hear the young ladies talking about the disparity of healthcare, and we know that has always been an issue. And again, that has now become more of an increasing problem. And stress is something that we deal with. So definitely, as we're looking at our health, as we're looking and as we cannot take care of our health, then it becomes very stressful, because we realize that if we go down, then the family goes down. If the mother gets sick, then there's nobody else usually to kick in and take care of everybody else. So I hope I've answered that question along with a few other things. I would be amiss if I don't say to everyone, if you're not vaccinated, please get vaccinated. We are trying so hard to get through this pandemic, and I can't even tell you now that people aren't having breakthroughs of catching COVID, even with the vaccination and being boosted. But you realize that if at least you get it, that way you're probably not going to get sick. You're not going to be stuck in the hospital. You're not going to end up on oxygen. And there's so much more we could talk about long haulers disease that goes along with COVID. So, it is imperative that we as African Americans get vaccinated. We are the ones dying from this disease. We are the ones who have chronic illnesses, which, we didn't even get to touch, talking about diabetes, heart disease, all those things that we have, which makes us more likely to die from this disease. And so therefore I stress, and if I don't get anything else across, ask you to please get vaccinated, please get a flu shot, and please go to your doctors, even in the time of COVID.
Next, I would like to introduce you to Davia Williams-Stevenson, and she is a licensed professional clinical counselor, a life coach, speaker, and podcaster. She helps teens, adults, couples, and families grow toward mental, emotional, and relational wellness. She has been published and presents on self-care and preventing compassion fatigue and burnout. She is a passionate advocate for the normalization of mental health care and access, particularly for people of color. She brings her message of honest and compassionate self-assessment and strengths, building to women's organizations, youth groups, churches, universities, and civic organizations. She believes that every experience, whether loss, hurt, fear, triumph, or victory, can be purposed to move you forward to your fullest life. She carries this philosophy not only in her clinical work, but also in her approach to business, service, and advocacy. She holds a BA in psychology from the University of Oklahoma and a master's in clinical counseling from Ashland Theological Seminary. Welcome. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you for this opportunity. I tell you, I'm grateful for the Black Women's Roundtable and attempting this event to get good information out to our community. One of the things that we know we do, it's part of our schema, but it's also our strengths, right? Is that we know how to pivot and we know how to take difficult circumstances and turn them into our own. So these distractions, we're going to pivot. We're not going to allow that to keep us from getting good information. So first of all, I love the video of the young woman. I love to address some of the things that they talk about and give great thanks to Professor, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Gombe, the one who wrote the article identifying the Superwoman schema. I believe, as I said, that I believe in honest and compassionate self-assessment. Until we have a name for a thing that we can identify, we can't decide if it applies to us or anyone else and start to make some changes. And so I'm really grateful that though many of us live that experience, and our mothers, and certainly as we have, those of us who are parents or aunties or what have you, have mothered the next generation, we know a number of those extra strengths, so to speak, philosophies that were given to us, right? As a Black person, you're gonna have to be twice as good to get anywhere as far, right? Now, in our lived experience, that may feel true, but man, is that pressure. You gotta be twice as good to get close, get even as far as the next person. We also know that there's historical memory. We talk about that tension between nurture and nature. This schema developed because it was functional. We had to do all these things. We had to, from the time of enslavement, repurpose ourselves over and over again as people tried to steal our identity and tell us who we were. It was functional. It was functional to run the household, to bring in the income when political circumstances kept our men from working, when one thing after another, right? So this schema developed as a functional adaptation to circumstances that we live in. The pandemic resembles a lot of those circumstances. We are forced to take on a number of roles. But what I say to people, to my clients when I have time to work with them, is first things first. Let's see if we can give something a name. Let's give honest and compassionate self-assessment. We gotta be validated. Let's see where there are distortions in how we are functioning. Do we really have to do everything? Or are we preventing others from rising because we think we have to do everything? How many times have we said to ourselves, well, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done? I bet every one of us has said that in our situation, right? What if we let something fall? What if we did? If I don't get dinner on the table, nobody's going to eat. Well, what will a hungry person do? They just might find a way to provide a meal. So I think those large, schema is the word now. I can't think of another word at this point. It works really well. Of all that we need to do to function our families, there's truth and there's distortion. And it takes a moment to distinguish what is true and what's distorted. For example, all right, we all have to eat. Food is necessary. However, there are some of us who have a distorted relationship with food. If you happen to be a bulimic or anorexic, do you not eat? You still have to eat, but there has to be work to distinguish what's a distortion and what is the truth and what is functional. And so I love what these young women had to say, that mental health care is starting to make it into the conversation. My work has always been in private practice. And so my clients typically come to me because they choose to come for counseling. There are those teenagers who are forced by their parents or spouse forced by the other spouse kind of thing, but people typically choose to come to me. And one of the things I've seen over the last probably 5-6 years is more and more people of color, Black women in particular, Black men as well, are starting to come for counseling. And I think that's a huge part of our growth potential. And I'm excited to see that. Now, again, we're talking private practice. There's a whole world of public mental health care that we don't access unless forced through some sort of punitive circumstance, through the courts or through the prisons or something like that. So it was encouraging to hear the young women say, this conversation is starting to happen, and we are finding ourselves having to educate our parents on the need for mental health care. We are holistic beings, and I'm sure that Dr. Edwards would agree that physical ailments and mental emotional ailments, they relate. There are, even as a counselor, one of the first questions I asked was, when was your last physical? Because things like hypothyroidism look like depression, lack of energy, malaise, all of those things. And so we know that taking care of our physical bodies and our mental emotional health are all very much related. Wrote a couple of notes as I was listening to the things that others were saying. So one of the things I was thinking about that we need to begin to converse or understand is maybe we need to redefine some things or expand our definition on some things. Like, what does it mean to be strong? I have so many people that say, I've been crying all the time. I hate to cry. Why do we think that crying is evidence of weakness? It's a reflex. Crying just naturally happens and we try to suppress it. It's a reflex. What if it's part of the functioning that God put in our bodies? And we think we've somehow distorted the meaning of tears, right? That's somewhere in that strength space, things that we may need to redefine. Along with that is redefining what is weakness or expanding what does it mean to be weak? What is failure? We can fail forward. How many of us in reality, when we take a pause and think about it, have learned more about those things we've dropped than those things we picked up, right? Failure is useful. Stumbling is useful. You stumble forward. And so my hope in this whole subject of the Black Superwoman's schema is that we first pause and think about those things that we are ill-defining, or those tools or roles that were functional at some time that may be dysfunctional. You may need a new tool. Doesn't mean that was a bad tool. It worked. It worked for the time you needed to use it. And maybe now we need a different tool. Certainly the pandemic has been like a pressure cooker for a number of things. Whatever cracks were already present in your world have been exacerbated. So say you're a family that's had to deal with domestic violence, and that hits every genre, every strata, socioeconomic status, education, what have you. Now there's no escape. For that family, kids going to school, they got away. They had a respite. For the female, and of course that's a gender stereotype. There are men who are also victims of domestic violence. To be out of the home is a place of respite, a place of potential escape, a place of other input. So I think to begin to come to a more functional norm of this schema is to understand where it came from, not bad, it was functional. And how do we adapt so that we also take care of ourselves? And I don't mean just getting your hair done or getting your nail done or getting a nap. I mean a change of how we see self-care as a part of our identity formation, not just our role activation. So I think I'm probably getting close to my 10 minutes.
2 minutes.
I got 2 minutes left. Okay. Gosh, I got lost in what I wanted to say. So if we are the benefit of Dr. Giscombe identifying this schema is that now we can validate it, we can see it in ourselves, right? We can, if it has a name, it's a thing. And if it's a thing, it can be validated. And if it can be validated, there's a population, we already know our population. If there's a population, we can begin to heal ourselves and redefine how we operate in our spaces. I think that pretty much captures what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful, useful. Gave me a lot to think about. Thank you.
Welcome.
Next we have Rhonda Little. Rhonda is a person-centered therapist and a cognitive behavioral therapist. With these interventions, she helps clients focus on their strengths, examine how they interpret, perceive, and assign meaning, change behavior and thought patterns, and accept and process. She believes that any client seeking counseling has the innate ability to move towards self-actualization, providing them with the confidence they seek, and empowering her clients is her ultimate goal. She treats individuals who experience anxiety, depression, grief, trauma, and addiction. She is a committed advocate for those in the African American community who view these issues as things rarely discussed. She pledges to provide this population with valuable information, skills, resources, and care. She also treats individuals who have experienced traumatic loss and grief, providing an empathetic space to process and move through grief so that a person may take responsibility for rebuilding their lives after loss or trauma. Good morning, Rhonda.
Good morning. Good morning. I was expecting the question, but good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on this forum with you wonderful ladies, strong ladies. I just wanted to talk about just a little bit about those young ladies in the video, that it was so refreshing, so uplifting, so heartwarming. I kind of got chills as they were speaking. And one of the things that I heard was unlearning old habits, and for me, I became a therapist because of the death of my children's father. And I needed someone, I needed to get them some help. And looking for someone to process the grief and loss of my children, because I didn't have the skills to do it. So I didn't understand that they needed somebody that looked like them, as well as I needed somebody that looked like me in order for us to process that. Because I come from the adage, what happens in the house stays in the house. So who can better help me and my children than somebody that actually looked like me, that's on the outside? I hope I'm making a little bit of sense. But these young ladies gave me so much hope, that I am working with my daughter in that aspect, teaching her that it's okay actually to seek therapy. It's not a sign of weakness, bridging the gap to total wellness. And total wellness looks like Dr. Edwards talked about, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, and as well as mental health. So I'm a little nervous. Public speaking is not something that I do.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
But those young ladies, I took a couple of notes, and they were talking about getting the help is not a failure. It's not a failure. And I was just trying to understand, looking back at and my family dynamics, how it was looked like as a failure. You're crazy. You know, what's wrong with you? You know, why are you going to see these people? We can fix this here at home. When obviously we couldn't fix it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in the state that I'm in, nor would my children be in the state that I'm in. Their fathers were murdered. You know, so when I was sitting in front of someone that did not look like me, did not have my experience, you know, as a Black woman with Black children whose parents died of violence. So I needed to be able to be the change that I wanted to see. So I became a therapist, you know, mental health therapist, as well as drug and alcohol therapy. And I needed to have that foundation so I can continue to pass the torch, so that we don't stay sick, you know. And as far as the pandemic and how that has affected me, I've had a lot of many traumas that's associated with the pandemic as it relates to the type of work that I do. I was currently working in the drug and alcohol field. So when I'm speaking and when I'm attempting to provide the services that are necessary for the clients, I am perceived, as the young lady said, she said, as an angry Black woman, because of the implicit biases that have already been bestowed upon us. You know, how do I present myself with addiction, with meaning what I say and saying what I mean, without being and show some passion for what it is that I'm doing without seeming to be an angry Black woman. And the young lady said she comes out already with a chip on her shoulder. And what I found myself trying to do was dispel the myth, you know, to actually try and fit in, only to find out that it really didn't matter what someone's perception of me was. You know, that's just that's just their perception of me. It's what I answer to, you know. So watching all of that and feeling and going through all of that through the pandemic has been trying. So I found myself seeking out additional support. I have a strong network of Black women, as well as men, who I can actually go to with these emotions, with these biases that we deal with, you know, that I deal with on a daily basis. Just being able to feel at home and feel comfortable in the skin that I'm in, around the same like-minded people, you know. I wanted to be able to present who I am and how and where I stand without feeling less than, without made to feel less than. And I found that I have been able to do so with the support group of individuals that I'm with. I'm truly honored. You know, I was trying to figure out why me? And I heard God say, why not you? You know, why not allow you an opportunity to show you yourself, you know, and again, I'm not a public speaker. I'm better one-on-one, but what I wanted to do was actually get an opportunity to do so around some women who are strong, you know, and not feel as though I need to be something other than I'm not, you know, and be able to continue to familiarize myself with this forum, with the platforms, and not always sit in the background, because I'm really good on the background, you know, it's being out front, you know. So having an opportunity to take care of myself so I can take care of other people. And I found out this is so important in this field of mental health. So I'm not exactly sure how much time I have left.
3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes. Okay. One of the things that I try to instill in my clients is, again, empowerment, accountability, and empowering myself and empowering them. I let them know that you must value what it is that you are that you're doing and who you are. And one of the ways that I do that is I ask them to put a Post-it on their mirror. And that Post-it says, I am of infinite worth. And with that being said, you can remind yourself on a daily basis that you are worthy. That regardless of what the pandemic has done, what traumas you've had in your life, what situations, any abuse, you can tell yourself that you are valuable. Taking care of your body, Dr. Edwards also talked about that as well. We're starting to eat better. One of the things that I also incorporated with some of my clients is purchasing a hula hoop, because we don't get a chance to go outside. So get a hula hoop and go back to that little girl and do some of those things that we enjoyed as a child. Cartoons, those types of things are so important as we learn to navigate through all of these trying times, and again, surround yourself with great people, support strong people, men and women, who are not afraid to share their truth and your truth with you when you're good and or you're bad. And the last thing I wanted to say is give of yourself. It talks about in Acts 20:35 that it's better to give than to receive. So go to church, just little things. Go to the high school, mentor a child, just be a support to someone else. So I think that it should be about my time, but thank you guys so very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rhonda. Really appreciate your authenticity. Ashley Edwards is a graduate of the prestigious Tuskegee University and Seton Hill University's Marriage and Family Therapy program. She is a pre-licensure resident therapist at the Center for Relational Change. She is an experiential and systems-focused therapist that merges holistic practices with therapy to help honor and explore the natural self. She is experienced working with groups, teams, youth, individuals, couples, and families. She focuses on the idea of relationships, including intra and interpersonal relationships. Her philosophy is that you can only discover yourself through the eyes of your relationships. There are no individuals in the world, only fragments of families trying to express themselves. Her goal in therapy is to help you discover your authentic voice through the exploration of self. She obtained a professional coaching certification from Duquesne University, Palumbo Donahue School of Business, and now focuses on transformative coaching. She is skilled at asking tough questions and providing a new perspective while willing to sit with you through uncomfortable moments. I always want to honor the human experience that we all are. Good morning, Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Hill.
Your focus on relationships and how we discover ourselves through them is fascinating to me. So don't forget to talk a little bit about that, if you will.
Don't you worry. We're going to talk a lot about that. I would be amiss if I didn't bring up systemic racism and white supremacy in this space. Even what we have experienced is a lot of white supremacy and systemic racism all in 10 minutes. As Davida and Rhonda were talking, I thought a lot about how we have had to survive in our world as women and as Black women specifically, learn behavior. The wonderful, wonderful young sisters in the beginning brought that up, learning behavior and passing it down. I immediately thought white is right. And that's what we've been working on, because that's the world we have to live in. And it is going to create a multitude of mental health issues. That's not us. That's not our natural way of being. That's not how we exist. It's not how we understand the world. But it is the world we live in. And it is the world we need to understand to survive, to work, to get resources, to anything. So it is our way of understanding, which has in a lot of ways made us disconnected from ourselves and our communities. Internalized racism through our communities perpetuates the strong Black woman schema, that you have to be a certain way to get a certain thing, is the notion that there is a right way and a wrong way. And there's just a way, the way that works for you. Sorry. It's a touching topic. Through families and relationships, I definitely want to talk about how I see this schema showing up in couples counseling and showing up in a lot of the family and relational cases that I have been seeing. It has been easy to ignore that you are tired when you are always running. So when we're out in the world and we're working and we're getting groceries, as everybody has brought up, you don't realize you need something, right? Because you're just going, and then you go to sleep and you wake up and you start it again. But as we've been able to slow down during this pandemic time, feels like it's been forever, people are noticing they have needs. I have needs besides what my husband wants. I have needs besides what my kids want. I have needs besides what my job wants. And what has been the most unfortunate is that a lot of the women and women of color that I've come across, they don't know what those needs are. They've never asked themselves, they've never considered it. And so now here we are in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s going, how do I take care of myself? How do I take care of myself and take care of my family and keep my job and not ignore everybody around me? Because that's an easy place to fall into when you start to try and work on yourself. And it has been making an interpersonal strain on relationships, since the Black woman specifically is the matriarchal figure in most African-American families. We have been the perpetuators of the generations, which has been a strain. Because our focus now becomes moving the generation along instead of nurturing it, making sure it's getting what it needs. I just want to continue it. It makes it where the young ladies brought up, if I bring up something to my mother, I don't know if she'll be able to handle it. And that was a powerful statement to me, because she probably cannot, right? And that's sad to think and to say, but like I said, she doesn't know her own needs. How could I possibly know what my daughter needs? And I think about how devastating that has to be for a mother to think, I don't know how to really help my daughter. And that disconnection starts to happen, because now I'm not a strong Black woman. Now what's going to happen? So you get further and further away from your emotions, from your interpersonal connections, your intrapersonal connections, so that you can stay on this pathway that has been made for most of us, to be strong, to not have any emotions, to not have any needs, to just be this person that just pushes on and then just, I don't know, we just respond and just take care of ourselves in the night or in our personal time that we don't have. But that's the thought of us, that we don't really need space. And that makes it hard to communicate and to be in community with each other, with the other pieces of our families, because it's hard to see the thing that you're so worried about. It might be struggling, it may be thriving, but it may be struggling. And then also trying to keep a hold of yourself. I think I have a couple minutes. It's also, we're passing down, the girls also brought up intergenerational curses. We are also passing those down as we keep perpetuating this thought process of we have to be strong. Every time we pass it on to another generation, that's another 30 years we need to go to before somebody thinks about maybe we should cut that habit out, right? So it is something that we are now passing along from slavery that we had to modify and adapt to survive. We've passed it all the way down here to 2022, right? And as we should, not that we should forget, but the way we have now learned to be with each other has become significantly different than the way that we were before. In the civil rights, when we had communities, this is different. We've learned to be individuals families are individual families, people are individual people, and we forget that we are communal and that we need each other, and that it's okay to lean and support on one another and to get what you need. Finding out what you need is okay. And boundaries. I probably don't have much more time, but please make some boundaries. You may not make some today. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, all of you. This has been, I don't know about anybody else online, but I feel informed and that I am not crazy, it's okay to feel the way I feel and react the way I react sometimes. This was extremely useful for me personally. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you again for your time and the insight that you have provided us with this morning. At this time, I asked Rhonda Little to prepare a meditation, maybe it's called, I'm not sure what to call it, Rhonda, but something that we can all join in with this morning online that will help us get centered in those turbulent moments that we have in our lives, that we can just take a few minutes to get centered again. And so I will turn it over to Rhonda. And after Rhonda has completed that, then Reverend Moore will pick us up again.
Thank you. Thank you again, ladies. I'm just truly overwhelmed and overjoyed. You guys are so awesome. Basically, I just chose a 1-minute relaxation meditation just to get centered. I find it so helpful because it helps throughout the day. When we find ourselves stressed and running and doing this and doing that, trying to get things done. And I just called it the loving kindness meditation of self. That's just what I coined it. And it's just for 1 minute. And basically you just plant your feet flat on the floor and you sit back, you sit up straight and you focus, and the focus is on your breath, and the focus is on loving you in the moment. And as the minute goes on, we will probably get distracted as usual, but we're focusing on our breath, and we're focusing and we're pouring the love back into ourselves. And we're just going to do this for 1 minute. Our feet flat on the floor, hands wherever you choose them, and just breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And we'll do this for 1 minute. And we just open our eyes, and we're just telling ourselves, I love me today. I love me today. I love me today. And hopefully that you will feel a little bit refreshed, a little bit open-minded, and you'll love yourself a little bit more today. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this journey and opportunities with you ladies. I'm truly grateful.
Thank you, each and every one of you. I'm telling you, that was exciting. And just want to take the opportunity, first of all, to say thank you to Ms. Hill who is the Senior Policy Advisor for Pittsburgh-Mon-Valley Black Women Roundtable. And I just love her spirit. And she is, I call her an encyclopedia of facts and things around social issues and policies and procedures. So thank you so much, Sister Jacqueline, for co-hosting this event. As always, it's excellent because we get the best of the best, and you all definitely are in that category, the best of the best. So thank you to all of the panelists. I want to thank our interns. We have 4 interns for the University of Pittsburgh who are working with us. And one of those students, Kayla, is the one who put the video together. So we want to thank her personally for being able to do that. And of course, to you, to the audience. But last but not least, the technician behind the scenes is Alexandria. Thank you so much, Alexandria, for your hard work and getting up on a Saturday morning. I'm telling you, and their students. So that was a special effort on her behalf, and we say thank you for that. So thank you for joining us today, and please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to see our upcoming events. As a matter of fact, mentioning upcoming event, the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, the Black Women's Roundtable is hosting an annual summit in Washington, D.C., beginning March the 9th through the 13th. I put my email in the chat. If you would like to learn more information about it or to look it up, you can look it up. Also up, Google National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, or you can just pull up Black Women Roundtable and you'll be able to see that event that's coming up. And also we're excited. We've had this discussion, and now we want to take it to a whole nother level. And so on April the 8th, we'll be doing our first theatrical performance on mental health and panel discussion that'll be held at Kelly Strayhorn Theater. So you will hear more and more about that. But finally, Alexandria, if you would please post the page for resources on mental health for Black women. Hey, these are some of the mental health resources if you'd like to reach out. Not to mention the therapists that are on the symposium today. Is available to you if you need to, and if you're available to our therapists on the symposium, please let us know. Please forward your email information to me, please. And please be safe. I reiterate what one of the sisters said. Please get the vaccine if you have not got it, for yourself and for protection from your families. You don't know how much it will mean to make sure that we keep each other safe. And if you have not experienced anyone having COVID, it's horrific, and not being able to be with them. So please, we ask to reach out. I feel so much better. I was breathing. I thought I was going to go to sleep, but I didn't. But we say this: sisters saving ourselves now, never too busy to help a sister. May God bless you, and may He keep you.